there are a lot of words in Hebrew that have two meanings,
Hmm.
and it depends on each context how you want to translate them. And
Hmm.
one of the more obvious ones is the word El or Elohim.
Hmm.
El could mean God, Elohim could mean gods, or it could just mean the God, meaning the
Yeah.
God of Israel, the God of the
Or
world.
it could even mean judges in one passage, right? I mean, or in a number of passages.
Right. Yes, it could mean, yeah, that's the
Like when they
exactly in a
talk
number
about
of
drilling the
passages.
guy's ear, says to bring him to the Elohim. That seems that's the judges.
Right. In Aaron, it says Aharon, he says, you are going to be Moses's speaker, but he's going to be your Elohim, your God,
Right.
your power.
So maybe their
So
Elohim is meant metaphorically, but when it says, you will do as the Elohim convict, and it's Yashi'un plural, there it obviously doesn't refer to God with a capital G, but to presumably judges or something like that.
right. So let me wait 1 second. Here we go. So let me make this a little bigger. 1 second. Let me change this to JPS. 1 second. And we can edit this out.
Now I want people to see how accordance works. This is great.
All right. So here we are. So what I'm showing you is Psalm 29:1 in the Hebrew and in the King James and in the Jewish Publication Society. Two translations and one text. So it says Mizmor David, a Mizmor, a Psalm of David, Havu Ladonai b'nei Elim. Give to God the sons of the Elim. Havu Ladonai kavod va'alos. Give to God the glory and the strength. Okay?
Hmm.
So what we have here is this word Elim, the B'nai Elim, the sons of
Hmm.
Elim. And so what does that mean? So let's take a look at these two translations. So
Yeah.
Nehemia, can you take, for example, the King James here?
Just reading on your screen, it says, "Give unto the Lord, O ye mighty." So Elim here, B'nai Elim is translated as mighty ones.
Right. Okay, and let's do the Jewish Publication Society.
Ascribe to the Lord, O divine beings.
Right.
So it's divine beings. Okay.
Right. And so basically
Yeah.
words like El and Elohim in each context, and they could also mean foreign gods. Does it mean foreign god, the god, or does it mean just like some strength, some mighty person? And these can mean different things. And each time you read this in your English, you're like, okay, not noticing that the translator made a big decision. They made a
Hmm.
big decision. Okay. Um, let's also look at Genesis 3:5 here for the same concept.
Hmm.
All right. So what we're basically in this story here, we're in the story of Genesis, and the snake is trying to convince Chava, Eve, he's trying to convince her to eat the fruit. And he says, he'll just start in the English, for God knows that in the day that you eat from it, that your eyes will be opened. V'nifkachu einechem v'yitem, and y'all shall be Kelohim.
Tell us
Like,
why you said y'all. I love the word
well,
y'all, but tell us why.
there's a well, for Southerners out there, you should know that y'all is very biblical because there's a difference between you, masculine, you, feminine, and y'all, masculine, and y'all, feminine,
So
right?
now I'm going to educate you on Southern English because I live in Texas now. And
Yeah,
in Texas, there's a distinction between y'all and all y'all. Y'all is singular, although it can be used to refer to two, and all y'all is plural. So, and it may differ in different parts of the South, but basically you're trying to show there's a difference between singular you and plural you. And hitem is you plural, all y'all
right,
will become Elohim or like Elohim.
right. And so what that basically means is that all y'all are going to become like Elohim, which we just saw could either mean God, it can
Uh-huh.
mean God with a capital G, God with a small g, like the god of Moab, the god
Hmm.
of the gods of Greece, right? And it
Hmm.
could also mean just a mighty person. And so what is the snake saying? You are becoming like Elohim. Okay, so why don't we take a look?
Hmm.
In this case, I want to show you the difference between the King James and the New King James.
Oh,
Okay,
wow. Which are supposed to be identical, except one is
except
supposed to have more modern language,
more
but
modern
in
language.
fact, they're not identical even in content.
Right. And so what
Wow.
so Nehemiah, can you kindly just read for me the King
Yeah.
James this last phrase here?
So then your eyes shall be open, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil.
Right. You shall be as gods. So Elohim means gods, right? And you read that, you're like, okay, fine. Let's read the New King James.
You will be like God, capital G, knowing good and evil.
Right. And so
Wow.
if you don't know Hebrew, you don't know that every time the name God is mentioned or gods is mentioned, the translator is doing their best to try and figure this out, this ambiguity. Is it gods or is it the God? Right?
Yeah,
So
that's
here,
amazing.
according to the King James, that the Adam and Eve are going to be like these gods that kind of exist around God, what we might think of as angels or something like that, right? Um, Not necessarily a direct equation, but that idea. No, but according to the New King James, it's no, you're going to be like God himself.
So there's two ways of looking at that, David. When
Yeah,
you say like angels, meaning what we would call angels. So one is to diminish what Genesis 3:5 means by the meaning of God or
right,
gods, and to say, well,
right,
no, it's not God. They understood,
right,
or let's say the ancient Israelites who heard this understood he doesn't mean Elohim capital G, means Elohim small g, gods, and small g gods is angels, like in the book of Job,
right.
and then
I think
maybe
wait,
some other places. The other way of looking at it
yeah,
is I once had a professor at Hebrew University who said Judaism isn't monotheistic. Judaism
right,
has many deities. Just we take this pill that we swallow that makes us
right.
feel good, and that pill is to say, "Oh no, we just have angels." But
Mi
and
kamocha, mi kamocha be'elim Adonai.
who is like you among? Okay, let's hold that
Right,
thought.
yeah,
And here's because that's actually something a little bit different, although maybe not. So here was his argument. He said, and here he was talking about Judaism in the broadest sense, meaning if you go to a Kabbalist 700 years ago who was formulating certain prayers, and he's praying to angels for them to intercede on God's behalf, what difference is there between an angel and God with a small g, right? Meaning that form of Judaism maybe does have many gods,
right,
except it convinces itself it doesn't by calling those gods angels. But from
right,
an outside, purely objective perspective, that maybe is polytheistic. There's one God who's most powerful, and there's these little gods who you interact with
right.
and
People
pray
like
to
to
as
throw
well.
around the word monolatry. Yeah,
Monolatry.
right.
So tell us what monolatry is, but it's not even monolatry. They're praying to these angels, right?
Well, so the monolatry, so it means that there's lots of gods, but God is the greatest God, and that comes from reading the Tanakh, the Bible in Hebrew, when you see these ambiguities here.
Well, my
So
understanding of monolatry is there's many gods, but you only worship one of them, right? In
right,
other
there's
words,
one,
you
and
say,
you're
yeah,
worshiping the best,
you say Kamosh is a god and Baal is a god, but I'm not supposed to worship Kamosh or Baal. I'm only supposed to worship
right?
Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh.
But it's not like
Whereas, it,
worship. It's not like sports where you like have your team even if they're bad. The idea is that you have the best God, right? That's
for
why you're
sure,
worshiping,
for
right?
sure. But in medieval Judaism, and let's say certain forms of Kabbalah at the very least, you have people who are praying to different powers that aren't the infinite God, the Ein Sof, and they'll say, "Oh no, those are just emanations from God." I've argued that medieval Kabbalah, specifically the Zohar, isn't monotheistic, but in Christianity, sometimes they'll talk about the triune deity, and medieval or Zohar Kabbalah at least had a decaun deity. And there's actually a statement, 10 decaun, 10 that are one. There's actually an explicit statement in the Zohar that says the one is 10 and the 10 are one, referring to the spirit. Maybe that's way off topic, but you bring
Right,
up a good point here. So go
right.
back to Mi Kamocha by Elohim Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. Go back, because that's actually a much more powerful statement or example in a way.
Yeah.
Exodus
So
15:11. So it's in the Song of the Sea. It goes back based on the internal biblical chronology, at least. If you take it at face value, this was written before the Ten Commandments,
right,
right? It takes place before the Ten Commandments. Who is like you among the Elim, O Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh? So who are these Elim? Who are these
right.
gods?
So who are these
Yeah,
alien? Why don't we just do? There's a cool thing on Accordance called Text
yeah.
Browser,
Uh-huh.
where you can see every text that you have
Ah,
all at once.
I don't think
Okay.
I've ever used this feature.
And so
Okay.
what we can see is, so the question is, Mika mocha be'elim Adonai, is like you, who is like you amongst the gods, O Lord, right? So here we have gods. Let's see, we have gods,
The
right? So
Celestials in the JPS. Who's
right,
like the most
right. So
Celestials?
when you see this in your English, you say among the celestials, you're like, okay, I'm just reading the English, but like when you see it in the Hebrew, you're like, oh,
Wait, mouse over the D. What's in the D? It's going to be the note that
if
tells us
others
others
mighty,
mighty. Who is like
but
you
they
among
still
the
leave out the
mighty?
obvious one of gods, right? They
Right,
left out.
right. So this is
So
a theologically correct translation.
right, so that was one case, but really these happen on every page. Every single
Yeah.
translation is making decisions like this, where they have where the words could have one of two meanings.